Hello, I am Mackenzie Nelson, and if you haven't watched all of my Mexico vlogs from the 6 weeks I was traveling in Mexico, go ahead and watch those. But this is the budget breakdown because we all know we get a little nosy in wanting to know people's budgets when they travel. So a few disclaimers, very minor before we start, is I don't include visas, flights, souvenirs, and the insurance I had while on my trip for 6 weeks. I am also telling all of this information in USD, so if you wanted to convert it to your own currency, go ahead and pull out a currency converter. While I was in Mexico, I did everybody a favor, including myself, by tracking my spending in the most inconvenient way ever, and I will not be doing this on my next trip. I will be using an app made for this. I just was not smart enough at this time, but I tracked down all of my spending per day. I told myself where I was, if it was a travel day, and then everything I spent money on and how much it was in US dollars. I converted it right away because kind of in my mind, as I spend Mexican pesos, I convert it right away, because you get so used to the currency. I want to mention that I set a $50 per day budget for my trip for 6 weeks or 42 days. I usually set a higher budget, like way higher than I think I'm gonna spend, and so I could be flexible and so I could have the money before I go on my trip to, do the things I want to do, spend a little bit more on trying the food, maybe get a cool souvenir for somebody back home, or even like if anything medical comes up and I need to go to the hospital or anything like that. I just always want to make sure I have enough money in my savings before I go on my trip, so I budget way more than I need to, and I think that you should as well. I broke down my budget in 4 different ways, in play or activities, food, hostels or accommodation, and transportation, with the exception that alcohol is part of an activity or play, and I got that from Backpacking Bananas, Christiane, because I think that that is the best way to track it, because if you're tracking it as food, you're gonna be like, I ate way too much on my trip, and feel bad about yourself. But this way, it's like a fun thing you do, little riskier thing you do. And with the list, how I tracked it by location every day, I put where I was and what town I was in. And some parts of Mexico were more expensive, like the Yucatan Peninsula was way more expensive than like Oaxaca State or Chiapas. Those two were really, really cheap. So my overall budget was just an average of like what I spent on everything in all of Mexico, and what I spent in each of my categories is also an average, but you could see definitely as I go from the Yucatan Peninsula all the way through to Oaxaca State, it definitely decreased in prices and I got to save a lot. How are you gonna budget for your trip? Are you like a super budgeted backpacker, or are you a flash packer? And what I mean by that is, like, are you looking for the fanciest hostels, or the one with the pool, or the one with great Wi-Fi? Or are you going out to fancy restaurants every night to get the best cuisine? And are you opting for like a bus or a train or even a flight to somewhere instead of like the local way to do it, or a taxi instead of walking? Or are you the budget traveler that walks instead of taking those taxis everywhere they can, or takes like the local buses, chicken buses, the colectivos instead of maybe the ADO buses? I am definitely somewhere straight in the middle, because I like to look for the hostels with the good reviews, the places that are gonna be fun and I'm gonna feel good and safe. And I also opt for transportation that often is the cheapest but the fastest way to get there, and sometimes that's not the colectivos, even though that's cheaper. And in Mexico, it's just a matter of a few dollars between a colectivo and an ADO bus between somewhere, and often the ADO buses are a lot better, comfortable, and cheaper and faster. I think the best way to be a budget traveler or somewhere in the middle like me is taking overnight buses, overnight trains, overnight flights even, to get somewhere, just so you don't have to pay for accommodation. And yeah, hostels are only like $10 on average in Mexico, but that could be different, you know. And often the overnight transportation's a lot cheaper than if you were to take it in the day. Some ways you could budget for your trip are eating at local places, street carts, or even cooking in your hostel. Get some pasta at the store that's super cheap and cook in your hostel, or find a hostel with free breakfast. That is the world's difference. Also, find cheap accommodations such as hostels or even couch surfing, which I haven't tried yet, but I do plan to maybe in the future. Also, a big tip that I learned in Puerto Escondido is checking Hostel World and Booking.com for the same accommodation or hostels, because often they won't be the same places, and often Booking.com could be cheaper and you could earn points on a credit card or whatnot. So definitely look at your options and don't just like book the first thing you see, but definitely make sure you find the cheaper prices, because they can be drastically different. Okay, and this is a Mac hack, because when you are planning like a day trip or how to get somewhere, what to do in a place, always look at tour guides. But if the tour guide is $100, $120 for the day, and you know you could do that for $20 yourself or with a group, definitely do that by yourself, because you get to see so much more than if you were going to be with the tour guide. Unless it's a very informational tour, I definitely suggest having a guide like Chichen Itza. Have a guide, they teach you a lot. But if it's like getting somewhere or doing a tour, always look online and search like tours to this place, tours of that place, see where they go, and see if you could get there and do that by yourself, and if it's cheaper rates. What I always do is like go on like Kontiki or Gap Travel, go on these like group travel browsers, ask your hostel workers, ask the people in your hostel if they've been to that place, and they could tell you if it's cheap to do it by yourself or not, and they're going to tell you the best place to do it. These travelers are stuck together. Another obvious backpacker hack is to split the cost with people that you meet in your hostels. You're gonna meet so many people and so many friends that are wanting to do the same thing as you, so maybe plan a day where you guys all go to Chichen Itza.
We're going to Chichen Itza!
Woo! And you could split the taxi or rent a car and split that cost, or definitely there's a lot of cheaper ways traveling in groups than you think. Just look for those friends that want to do the same activities with you, because they are there, they're in the hostel in that town for a reason, and they're gonna want a friend to do it with as well. And then lastly but not least, opt for the free activities in that town. Go sightseeing, go hiking, go swimming in the ocean, or laying on a beach. All of these activities are so much fun and so relaxing, and exactly what you need when you're traveling and very, very busy. So make sure you do mix in a few activities here and there to even out your costs. Alright, just a few really important notes that I want to share with you, and if you were going to take anything away from this video, take this away. 1. Do not be afraid to do the things you want to do because of money. You are going to regret leaving a place if you didn't take all the opportunity that that place has to offer. If that place is so famous for dolphin watching or whale watching or something, go on a boat and do that, even though it's $10 a day. That is nothing. But compared to back home in LA where I live, that is the cheapest activity you could do. You can never get a price like that back home. So make sure you take those opportunities to eat what you want, do what you want, meet the friends you want to travel with, because you're not going to be able to do that back home. The second thing is do your research before you go to that country so you're not in like financial shock. Considering you're watching this video on backpacking Mexico, maybe you're going to Central America or even Mexico and you're trying to see the budget. So you're on the right track by doing your research and knowing what you should budget for when you get to that place. Also, a third thing, and probably the thing that I hate doing the most, is backtracking when you're in a place. If you have all the time in the world and you're just a free traveler and you have a year to travel or even more, don't be afraid of backtracking. But for me, who has like not so much time to travel and I travel between school breaks and everything, try not to backtrack. So don't go all the way from Cancun to Bacalar and then back up to Tulum just to go back to Chiapas, you know? So make sure that you plan out your route as best as you can, and that way it'll be a lot cheaper than if you were just keep taking buses back and forth and all around. And okay, for the big announcement that everybody has been waiting for, what did I spend on my trip? For a total of 43 days in multiple states in Mexico, traveling throughout the country, I spent a grand total of $1,491.50 or something. And breaking that down into categories, I spent $109 on play and activities, $504 on food, which I do not regret at all because it was so good, and $424 on hostels, which came out to an average of $980 a night, and $254.50 on transportation, excluding flights to and from Mexico. And that included all buses, taxis, colectivos, and ferries, which came out to an average of only $35 a day. And when I budgeted for $50 a day and it only came out to $35 a day, I could have traveled for so much longer. And again, I had to get home. I had some things at home, or else I would have traveled longer, but it could be cheap. Just make sure you don't give yourself a strict budget and that you allow yourself to have fun, and you're gonna have a blast. And if you're traveling to Mexico or just researching what to spend in Central America, I hope this video did a lot of help for you, and I hope that you have a absolute blast, because Mexico was the best trip I've ever taken. And make sure you go back and watch all of my Mexico vlogs, because there are a lot of them, and I will also be traveling Central America to South America very, very soon, going back to Mexico City. So make sure you follow along, hit the subscribe button, and like the video if this was really helpful for you. Alright, bye!
Was missing.